Over 30,000 years ago, Neanderthals went extinct from the Earth, while their closest relatives Homo sapiens came to rule the planet, and they are known as us. Although Neanderthals shared many similarities with modern humans, they were shorter and more robust in appearance, and at the time, they were highly skilled hunters. During this period in history, in northern Siberia, a Neanderthal named Ao was out hunting with his friend Boer. After capturing a deer, the two set off for home on a sled. After trekking for hours across the vast snowy plains, they found their home a cave. As soon as they entered, someone in the tribe hurriedly shouted, and Ao discovered that his wife Anak was in labor. The couple's daughter was born, and they named her Nea. After the birth, this Neanderthal held his daughter before the entire tribe. Proud of the heir that had been born, he hoped Nea would carry on the tribe's bloodline and legacy. On this joyful day, everyone feasted on the game and celebrated together. However, after everyone had fallen asleep, a scream rang out from outside the cave. Ao and Boer went to investigate and discovered that one of their warriors was already dead. This indicated that the creature known only as the Beast had attacked the area once again. Fearing for his daughter's safety, Ao decided to set out with Boer to hunt down this beast and eliminate it once and for all. On the way, they discovered a massive footprint in the snow, which terrified Boer because he had once been attacked by the beast, which had torn out one of his eyes with its claws. Even so, the two continued searching for days. At last, Ao discovered that the beast was actually a polar bear. Boer was hiding under the snow at the time, but he revealed himself to confront the animal. The polar bear, however, swiped him to the ground with a single blow, knocking him unconscious. Ao was then forced to face the bear alone, when the beast grabbed him and began biting his neck. Ao seized the chance to stab it with his knife. The battle continued, and though Ao was exhausted, he refused to give up, striking at the beast again and again. At last, the polar bear, too wounded to fight back, collapsed and died. Hours later, Ao woke up, and thanks to the bear's hide, he managed to survive the harsh Siberian cold. Unfortunately, Boer wasn't as lucky. Ao was forced to leave his friend's body behind and brought the bear back to feed his tribe. After a long journey, Ao finally returned home, eager to reunite with his family. He didn't notice that two unfamiliar men were watching him. Tragically, when the Neanderthal returned to the cave, he found that everyone, including Anak and Nea, had been killed. Ao suspected that modern humans were responsible, and when two of them broke into the cave and tried to attack him, his suspicion was confirmed. A fierce fight broke out, and though he was all alone, Ao managed to defeat the intruders, just as he was about to finish off one of them with his dagger. Though burning with the desire for revenge, this warrior no longer wanted to take another life, so he spared the two humans. Now, Ao had become the last Neanderthal in his tribe. While grieving over the loss of his loved ones, he recalled a memory from 25 years ago, a scene from his childhood that was completely different. Back then, Ao and his twin brother Owe were playing by the sea when they suddenly heard a strange sound coming from the forest. They followed the mysterious noise and found a man sitting on the ground, with a flute hanging around his neck. Ao was fascinated by the object and decided to bring it to his father, who had been sick for days and whose body had reached its limit. Like many in the village, his father had caught an unknown illness. Ao tried to play the flute, making it sing, hoping to calm his father. After the memory, Ao wandered aimlessly through the snow. At that moment, he encountered a pack of wolves watching him from a distance. This Neanderthal imitated a wolf's howl and managed to scare them away, but overwhelmed by grief and exhaustion, Ao collapsed in the snow and fell asleep. At that moment, another memory surfaced. He remembered his first contact with humans. At the time, disease was spreading through the tribe. To survive, the Neanderthals traded weapons, food, and even some of their children with rival tribes. Ao ended up being one of the chosen ones, separated from his brother. Before parting, his brother gave him the flute. From that day on, the two brothers were worlds apart, but Ao found a new companion, the young man Boer from the tribe. Over the years, Boer became his best friend. Yet now, having lost everyone he loved, Ao decided to journey back to the old tribe, hoping to find his long-lost brother. For many days and nights, this Neanderthal crossed the snowy plains and reached the warmer, forested regions of northern Europe. He decided to rest by a fire, but suddenly encountered a herd of cattle. He quickly climbed a tree to escape. Ao was nearly trampled by the stampeding herd, but instead of fear, he felt a greater appreciation for nature and all the living creatures around him. The next day, Ao entered the forest to hunt a wild boar, but accidentally fell into a pit. Seconds later, a human tribe with painted faces captured him and locked him up. When he arrived in the village, the locals were baffled by his rugged features and hairy face. Ao tried to show he came in peace, but he couldn't understand the tribe's language. After being locked in a cell, another couple from a different tribe were also thrown in. The young man was taken before the chief, aka, to be sacrificed. His wife, Aki, screamed in terror, but it was no use. She was forced to watch her husband die right in front of her, a dagger plunged straight into his heart. Shocked by the horrifying scene, Ao believed that all people with painted faces were savages. After the sacrifice, aka came to the cell and began painting Ao's face, as if preparing him to be the next offering, but Ao refused, which enraged aka, who threatened to kill this outsider. Ao knew he had to escape quickly. He noticed a beehive hanging from a tree and came up with a plan. With great effort, the Neanderthal broke free from his restraints, covered himself in mud, and grabbed his stick before charging toward the hive. Once he reached it, Ao knocked the hive down from the tree, and the bees instantly scattered and swarmed. He wasn't satisfied yet, and ran through the village with the beehive in his hands. The mud on his body protected him from being stung by the bees. As a result, all the face-painted people, including aka, screamed and fled in all directions. Ao took the opportunity to escape through the forest. Amid the chaos, Aki also decided to flee and followed Ao to a lake where she washed herself. Afterward, Ao looked for a safe place and found a cave filled with bats, but he wasn't afraid, thanks to his connection with nature and all living creatures. Later, Ao lit a fire and tried to get some sleep. At that moment, Aki quietly entered the cave and rested in another part of it. A few hours later, Ao heard a scream from inside the cave. When he went to check, he discovered that the female prisoner was giving birth just like when NEA was born. He witnessed the birth of a baby girl. The mother named her Wama. Although they couldn't communicate, Ao did his best to help gathering wood and starting a fire to keep them warm. The next day, he caught 2 birds for them to eat, but Aki was frightened by his unusual appearance and told him to stay away from her daughter. At nightfall, while the young mother slept, Ao quietly took Wama out of the cave. The Neanderthal believed this baby was the reincarnation of his daughter NEA and was determined to protect her. However, the next morning, when Aki woke and found her daughter missing, she was furious. She swore to take revenge on Ao. Holding a spear, she spotted Ao and her child resting in the forest and was about to strike, but then she heard Wama crying. To her surprise, Ao approached Wama and held her as if she were his own daughter, soothing the little girl. Even so, Aki still didn't trust him. She suddenly lunged at Ao with her spear, trying to kill him. Ao barely dodged the attack. Aki took the chance to grab her daughter. Just as she was about to run away with Wama, they encountered more face-painted tribesmen. They had come to recapture the prisoners. The young mother tried to resist, but one of the men hit her with a spear, knocking her unconscious. Meanwhile, another tribesman approached Ao. The two began to fight. Though the painted man had a spear, the Neanderthal was more agile. He not only disarmed his opponent but also knocked him out with a punch. Next, he saw a tribal woman trying to take Wama. He punched her to the ground and rescued the child. All the noise reached aka, who threw a spear at Ao, but Ao easily blocked it with his arm. Still, the tribal chief leapt forward and attacked Ao with his fists, but Ao broke free and struck back. In the end, the two faced each other, shouting and roaring like wild beasts fighting for dominance. Even Akka couldn't defeat Ao's determination. He led the other tribesmen back to the village. After the fight, Ao picked up Wama and handed her to her mother, who had regained consciousness. Aki thanked him for his help, but Wama kept crying. Ao thought she might be hungry and gestured to Aki to feed the baby. After Aki did so, Wama finally calmed down and fell asleep in her mother's arms. Although Aki still couldn't fully trust Ao, she decided to follow him on the road ahead, to find a safe place to raise her daughter. On the way, Ao began to see visions, his brother Oe tapping on a small tree branch, as if playing a drum. Aki saw nothing, but the vision showed the last place Ao had seen his brother, suggesting that Oe was nearby. The journey continued, but Ao started to feel unwell. He had nosebleeds, severe headaches, and coughing. All signs pointed to the same illness that had taken his father's life, but Ao planned to find his brother before giving up. A few days later, the three of them crossed a lake. Aki saw a fallen tree trunk that looked familiar. The two kept moving forward, but Ao's condition deteriorated rapidly, and he could barely stand. So Aki decided to carry her daughter and continue the journey on her own. But as they crossed the lake, Ao collapsed to the ground with a splitting headache. Aki decided to pick up Ao's spear and set off alone with her daughter. However, when she looked back and saw Ao lying there, she felt pity for the Neanderthal. Despite the heavy burden, Aki carried both Ao and Wama, walking the rest of the way. Soon, she found the old camp of her tribe. It was now completely deserted. Aki recalled that years ago, aka and the face-painted warriors had attacked her tribe. Most of the villagers were killed, and only a few survivors escaped. Even so, she decided to rest there. She lit a fire and used plants she found in the forest to make medicine. A few days later, under the care of this young woman, Ao gradually recovered and regained his strength. During this time, Aki hunted and fed Ao. Ao's affection for her grew deeper. After days of healing, the Neanderthal finally recovered. Aki even showed him the plants she used to make the medicine. Now that he knew how to cure his tribe's illness, Ao became even more determined to find his brother and help those he had left behind. But while resting by the fire, the two heard rocks tumbling from the mountains above. Aki and Ao went to investigate and saw Aka and his warriors waiting on the slope. Without hesitation, Aki grabbed a spear and threw it at one of the soldiers. He was struck hard and fell dead. In response, Aka and the others launched an attack. The couple had to hide Wama in a cave. They were chased by the tribesmen but managed to shake them off. They found a small tunnel they could squeeze through, but Wama's cries gave away their position. A face-painted warrior tried to crawl through the narrow tunnel after them. Ao took off his polar bear fur cloak, lit it on fire, and threw it at the warrior. Terrified by the flames, the man retreated. After shaking off their pursuers, the two of them continued exploring the cave. They discovered a space filled with cave paintings. Ao was startled by the drawings, but Aki quickly recognized them as the work of his people. Then Aki showed Ao how to paint. She found some pigment, poured it on the ground, and pressed her hand on it, leaving a handprint. Ao did the same, marking that both of them had been there. This experience brought them even closer, and Aki began to believe that Ao was someone she could trust. A few days later, the three finally left the cave. Aki and Ao had also learned how to communicate. Aki even taught the Neanderthal how to throw a spear accurately. Ao learned quickly. They continued their long journey and reached Central Europe. There weren't many animals around, so they survived on plants and seeds. One day, they found another cave filled with giant animal bones. The bones had clearly been there for a long time. Ao noticed traces of his tribe. As he explored deeper into the cave, he found a pile of scattered skulls. They seemed to belong to members of his tribe. Out of respect, Ao gathered all the skulls in one place, honoring his fallen kin. After that, he went to speak with Aki, but was suddenly attacked. A stranger punched him in the head and knocked him unconscious. This man appeared to be a Neanderthal too, but he was speaking with a human tribe painted in yellow. After learning what was going on, they went to see the newcomers. When they saw people like Aki and Wama, they were happy, but just like with the previous Neanderthal, they rejected Ao because of how he looked. Eventually, the tribe's chief ordered him to leave and even threatened him with a spear, but Ao seized the weapon and broke it in two, showing he came in peace. Even so, the tribe continued to reject him and began throwing stones at him. This made Aki furious. To save Ao, she stood in front of him and told the Neanderthal to leave. She said, "This is not the place for you." Ao left the cave. That night, he lit a fire and saw another vision of his brother. The vision inspired him to continue his journey alone. But before leaving, he threw his fur cloak from the cave roof. It landed in Aki's hands. She used it as a bed for her daughter. While searching for rodents to eat, Ao ran into Aki again. He was still upset that she had driven him away, but as an apology, the young woman let him hold Wama, just like his own daughter. This gesture reconciled them, and they continued searching for Oe and his tribe together. They arrived at a burning forest. Suddenly, a herd of horses ran past them. Even though it was a beautiful moment, Aki hadn't eaten well for days. She had no milk left to feed her daughter. In this desperate moment, Ao went hunting. He saw a mare and her foal walking toward him. Because of his bond with nature, the mare didn't attack. Aki was able to collect some horse milk to feed Wama. The two of them thanked the horse and let it go. Aki looked at Ao with growing admiration, believing he was worthy of being a father. After regaining their strength, they finally found the place where Ao's tribe once lived. The Neanderthal was excited, hoping to see his brother again. He called out Oa's name and heard drumming in response. Ao believed it was his brother answering. He ran into the cave, but only found a sheepskin. Its paw was touching a nearby wooden post. Ao found Oa's body and realized his brother was gone, and so was the entire tribe. He broke down in tears. Faced with this tragedy, Ao walked to the other side of the mountain. He played the flute one last time, saying goodbye to his lost loved ones. Then he threw the flute off the cliff, because now that his brother was gone, the hope of continuing the tribe had also died. He even considered jumping off the cliff himself, but Aki appeared, shouting his name, as if pleading for him not to do it. The Neanderthal struggled inside. After nearly making a terrible decision, he changed his mind and turned back. Suddenly, the edge of the cliff crumbled. Ao slipped and fell. Aki screamed in terror, thinking he was gone forever. Fortunately, Ao grabbed the rock wall at the last moment. He used all his strength to climb back up the mountain. He hugged Aki and Wama. Though he had lost his family and his people, Ao knew he had a chance to start a new life with his partner and daughter. 4 years later, Ao was walking through the countryside with Wama sitting on his shoulders. Aki was pregnant with their child. This family chose to live away from other tribes, afraid of being rejected like before. Even so, they were happy living in the mountains. Wama grew up day by day under Ao's care. One day, the three of them gathered by the sea. While Ao was building a fire, Aki called them over to listen to the baby's heartbeat inside her belly. Ao happily realized, even if he was the last living Neanderthal, his people's bloodline would continue through his son. Centuries later, the extinction of Neanderthals remains a mystery. Among all the human species, only Homo sapiens survived. Even so, Neanderthals left their mark on history, and humanity continues the eternal struggle for survival. Alright, that's it for today's video. I'm your film enthusiast, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.